back to the Unfiltered Soul. Today I have Kat Martin with us, and I met her through my lovely friend Jessica De Leon. Her episode was the second episode, one of the top downloaded episodes of the Unfiltered Soul, and she introduced me to this lovely soul, and I can't wait to learn just a little bit more about Kat and what Kat does. As you know, I've mentioned previously, if you don't know, I have always been very curious about my own throat chakra and my own voice. And so that's what Kat does. She's a voice activation coach. And so, Kat, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what we will be unfiltering today.
Yes. Well, firstly, before I say anything about myself, you have a great speaking voice, by the way. So we could talk a little bit more about that later, if you'd like.
Thank you.
And I am, as you said, a voice activation coach. I'm very, extremely passionate about what I do. And I essentially help people, as I did for myself first, I help people find their truest, most authentic soul's voice and bring that out into the world, whether that means speaking your truth, singing, being able to feel like you could just make sounds to let emotion out of your body. And a lot of breathing goes into that as well, obviously.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. At first, when I first met you, I thought it was just singing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to learn it's not just singing, speaking, sound, all the above. Cool. So you mentioned that you helped yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Will you share a little bit about that?
Yes. I will try to keep this, it's like a never-ending story. So I'll try to synthesize it in a way that is palatable. Since I talk about the hard palate and the soft palate so much. So I have been playing music since I was 4 years old. So music is my absolute passion, my heart, my soul. I am also a perfectionist. So for a long time, in my childhood, not so much. As I started to get older, music was very much wrapped in having to excel, having to be excellent enough to try to get money to go to college, to try to get awards, to get ahead. And when I was in my 20s, I started singing opera. And when I was singing opera and pursuing an opera career, it was still coming from the same place of I was trying to prove myself. I was hoping that I could have fame and fortune. And I'll backtrack a little bit about singing. So there's this whole path of the perfectionism that runs in my family and hoping to try to use a skill or something to make money. And this fear of like, oh my gosh, if I don't make money, I'll be destitute, but I want to be an artist. And so there was always this fight, this battle between wanting to make money, wanting to have accolades, but needing my artist soul to be heard and to be seen and to come out. And about singing, so I was pursuing this opera career. And I consider myself a fairly smart person. I graduated from college with a really high GPA, and I've always been a teacher's pet because I love accolades and I love being liked. And so I knew how to study, and I knew how to study well. So after years of investing in the best teachers, I went to University of Southern California and was getting a minor in music, a major in business administration because I was trying to keep my parents happy. And I was studying with a teacher from USC, fabulous teacher. And then after that, just studying with the best teachers, some of the best teachers around Los Angeles, taking workshops and everything that I could. And yet I was in fact feeling like I understood singing less over time, more and more, and then started losing my voice, started having all of these vocal issues to the point where I finally went to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor and found a polyp on my cords. Now, this wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of singers who get nodules, and a polyp is like a callus that you get on your vocal cords. A nodule is when it gets way worse. So thankfully I found it at that time, but I was also diagnosed with muscular tension dysphonia, which is this whole, a very hard to detect. It's almost like people a lot of times who have an autoimmune disorder where they never get diagnosed, or it's kind of hard to know what's going on. Doctors couldn't understand why I was experiencing all this vocal fatigue and pain and losing my voice constantly, because it wasn't just the polyp. It was in fact all of these different, because we have so many muscles in our neck and holding our voice box, our larynx. There's just so many intricate muscles that stem, including the fascia, right, surrounding the muscles. And what happened with me is they were firing incorrectly. So in order for me to speak and to sing, I was using some muscles way too much, other muscles not enough, right? So it was very inefficient. I was seeing doctors, speech therapists, and I was trying to fix this from a logical perspective. I was trying to use logic over and over to a problem that was not 100% logical or physical. So I basically, what I like to say is, in 2019, I had my dark night of the soul, where I had, yeah.
Before you continue on, for somebody who doesn't know what a dark night of the soul is, can you share with that? Because I know somebody's gonna be like, "What the heck is that?" Can you share what that is before you tell us about your dark night of the soul? Okay.
This is my understanding of it. What is my understanding of it? To me, it is when we are living our life one way, completely in this physical reality, and perhaps maybe not on our truest soul's path. And whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, creative source, kind of knocks you on your ass to redirect you onto your correct path.
Yeah.
And so I definitely got knocked on my ass.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
So tell us about your dark night of the soul experience.
It kind of came in waves. The first wave, and this will be a longer thing, but the first wave was 2017. I lost my younger brother suddenly to a heart condition that was not known. And he was 27 years old. It was completely just did not make sense. 1 in a million type of thing. And it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and the most life-changing thing that's ever happened to me. That started to wake me up and want to take more control of my life and go more towards spirit, right? And then 2018, there was some more stuff that happened. And then 2018 is when I started totally losing my voice and going to every doctor, speech therapist, the best opera teacher. And then I was with such a great opera teacher that she started finally to help me understand what I had been doing wrong before. And I'll get a little bit more into that. And then 2019 was the total dark night of the soul. I got myself into thousands of dollars of credit card debt. So unhappy. I was bartending to try to, stay afloat living in Los Angeles while still pursuing this career, while still hitting my head up against the wall. And I finally just had to come to a point where I had to surrender everything. Everything.
Give me goosebumps.
Yeah, when I just think back to it, because I was pushed up against the wall and I had no place to go except the very last straw was I moved into this gorgeous 1920s mansion in West Hollywood with a few other women. And I was with this voice teacher and all these other, what I thought were amazing women. And the woman who helped me move in knew that I was an opera singer. And I said, look, this is my whole life. I need to be able to have a place to practice. And there was a whole other wing to this mansion. And then it turned out that the woman that she moved me underneath is a woman who literally hates opera. So I would be humming in my room and I would get a text like, can you please not be doing that? So I was like, okay, what, like, and it was a confirmation that she was a symbol that I had been silencing myself or putting myself in situations that would keep me silent. Since forever. And so I guess where I'm trying to bring it back around, that was probably in 2017, I started to realize this isn't totally physical. There's more going on, but I needed more time. And then 2019 is when I realized, wow, I'm trying to fix physically an emotional and a spiritual battle issue going on. And there were many.
Yeah. And so you were able to fix that through your voice?
Ooh, yes. I had to first things first, I had to fix my relationship with my voice. And that's an interesting thing to say because a lot of times people would be like, what do you mean? How do you have a relationship with your voice?
I was going to say, what does that even look like?
Well, it got funny. It's funny. What I do is it's all very based in research and it works, but I had to become like a kid again because I was essentially healing a lot of things that happened in my childhood. So I'll give a little bit of background about that. I would sing a lot as a child and I loved it. I would roll around in the grass with our dog Mac and I would sing into his ear and I was always singing and I was always loud and I had a very loud, high-pitched sound because I'm an opera singer from a young age. So I got a lot of messages when I was young and I understand it. People's ears are bleeding, but I got a lot of messages of like, oh, can you not do that? Nah, not right that. And I know it wasn't meant as harm. But from a young age, I was receiving messages, oh, I'm too loud. Oh, I'm too much. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. You know? And I was also bullied a lot in school, which is interesting because I'm 6 feet tall. I was always bigger than everybody. So I got bullied for being different. I don't know why I didn't just knock them on their butts, but I didn't. I just internalized it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And 7th grade, I had a teacher, a music teacher who noticed my voice, but I didn't know, that there was something going on there. And so she gave me a solo in, I think, 6th or 7th grade. And I was singing this solo and I remember hearing the kids snickering in the audience. And then afterwards, the kids were all laughing, saying, why is your voice so loud? Why does your voice shake like that? Had a very strong vibrato from a young age. And I didn't know any of that. And so since I was already so used to being bullied and terrified about being different, I just stopped singing altogether. Never told my parents, never told the teachers, just completely stopped singing and started believing that there's something wrong with my voice and it doesn't want to be heard. Nobody wants to hear it. So when I bravely took a voice class senior year of college, the teacher, the first time, she was a beautiful opera teacher and singer who's just most gorgeous woman, most gorgeous voice. And she looked at me after one time of hearing me sing and said, have you ever considered opera? And it partially didn't compute because I was like, wait, but nobody wants to hear me sing. But it also hit my soul so hard that I just was, okay, I'm going to run with this. And that's when I started going for a minor and then going for a master's afterwards, which I didn't complete because I was too terrified. So here I was pursuing, from a logical perspective, opera. Meanwhile, my subconscious brain was still telling me, your voice is terrible, it's ugly, nobody wants to hear it. And my subconscious and my logical brain were battling and fighting that entire time. And so, talking about healing my relationship with my voice, I believe we have a relationship to everything. We have a relationship to the planet, to animals, to our relationship with our bodies. I've had to do a lot of work to heal my relationship with my body and our voice. And so the messages that we have about our voices, whether I think that I hate it or love it, whether I think that it's too loud, or the little messaging that we have going on. Ooh, I never say the right thing. Ooh, I'm afraid. Like, all of that shows what our relationship is like with our voice.
I feel like so many aha moments right now.
Whew.
Like, oh my goodness, just the way we think about it and talk about it or silence it ourselves because we've been silenced in the past.
Yes.
Wow. So you reestablished a relationship with your voice. You learned to love your voice again.
Yes. And it's a daily commitment, like a marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically, what I'm hearing you say, without actually saying it, is that you had to do some inner child healing. And it was little cat, baby cat, who may have been scared or afraid of being seen, afraid of being heard, in adult cat's body, not allowing adult cat to fully speak or to fully sing.
100%.
Yes. One of my mentors often tells me, we're all just little 8-year-olds walking around this earth, trying to be okay. Wow, so now you have your voice.
Yes.
So you found your voice. And
yes.
You're using your voice.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Ooh. It is a daily thing. I started finding it, I'll kind of say this first, back in 2019, because I found my voice in 2019, I began teaching in 2020. And when I began teaching, it forced me to level up in my own healing with my voice, which is amazing. But in 2019, I moved back in with my parents since the first time I was 18 years old. And it was terrifying. And as I said, God kicked my butt. And I even lost this really high-paying bartending job that I had been doing, and like everything, because that's what I had known for so long while pursuing this career. Everything that I knew that was a part of my personality, I'm putting air quotes, was stripped away from me. Completely stripped away.
Because of the pandemic?
No, this was before.
Oh, okay.
So actually, I had a pretty easy time in 2020 because I had already gone through my dark night of the soul. And I feel like a lot of people went through their dark night of the soul in 2020.
Okay.
But I had already gone through mine. So when 2020 hit, I'm like, okay, that's uncomfortable, but I already know uncomfortable. Like, so, all of that was stripped away, and I decided to quit opera. And that was one of the scariest decisions that I've ever made, because I felt like a failure. And coming from a very, very high achieving family where we go to great universities, we do well, we get high GPAs, all of that. I felt like a complete failure. And I felt like all of those years that I'd been studying it and really dedicating myself to it were a complete waste, which of course they weren't, but that's what it felt like. And I went through extreme depression for a couple of months. And this is interesting to say, but it was, if I've ever had a time that I've ever come closest to thoughts of potentially taking my life, that was the closest I've ever been. because I'm like, what's the point? Who am I? What is this all about? What have I even been doing with myself for this past 13, 14 years? And I couldn't even play music. I couldn't do anything with music. I needed a break. And then I just started listening to audiobook after audiobook after audio, like Marianne Williamson's Law of Divine Compensation on repeat. And I was going to yoga every day. That was the only thing keeping me sane. And just trying to take it one day at a time. Just like, okay, reestablishing who I was, meditating, praying, going fully to God, and just, okay, one step at a time. I can do this. I can rebuild, but it's not going to be from the same place as before. And I slowly started practicing piano again, just very slowly. And then after a few months, I started just kind of vocalizing a little bit again, just kind of dipping my toe in it. And then I remember specifically there was one night where I went to sing opera again, and I'm actually getting emotional about it right now. I broke down crying because I realized that I had been hating my voice for so long and trying to force it to be something that it wasn't. And therefore trying to force myself to be something that I wasn't for whatever reason of trying to prove myself to others instead of singing for the joy of it. And that was when I made a promise to myself, to God, to all of my ancestors, and to everybody that I will either quit music for the rest of my life, or if I continue music as a career or anything in my life, it can only be from 100% joy, pleasure, and for the love of it.
Mm-hmm. From an outsider's point of view, and please forgive me if sometimes I'm a little bit on the bolder side, so please forgive me, but it sounds like in the past that your voice was very ego-driven.
Yes. Very ego-driven, or rather, it wasn't my voice, because my voice is perfect as it is. Mm-hmm. I was using my voice for my own ego.
Yes.
And I was treating it like, it's interesting to say this, but I've been posting more about this, that the voice is actually a sacred vessel between us and our higher power. And I believe that it was given to us as a sacred vessel to sing to our higher power, to express that higher version of ourselves. And it has been co-opted within our culture, within our society, and then therefore within ourselves. So yes, I was using it for the ego, and I was punishing it for not being perfect, for it not being able to be marketed and used to make money and to gain me fame and accolades.
Thank you for allowing me to just kind of ask that question.
Yeah.
I didn't ask a question, but like point that out, and then you reiterate and shift it just a bit, like it was a tiny shift. I know there was ego in it, but thank you for that. Just the way you re-explained it. Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't have any other words other than thank you. So here you are now. You're using your voice. And you're teaching others how to activate their own. And again, from my perspective, or from what I thought I knew, I thought it was just singing. Will you go into that a little bit more?
Yes. Actually, the truth is, and this was in my own deep dive of understanding and then going, and I'd like to just say, I don't know if it's a thing about me being a Gemini, but I can go very, very, very woo-woo. Right? Just woo-woo, very spiritual. However, I then also need to go very much into research and understand why that is. So I always have those two elements, and that's what I always bring to what I'm teaching. So I could give a student a totally crazy out there exercise, and then I'll explain to them why it works.
I enjoy that. My Virgo self loves that.
Yes. Yes. I said that because of your question. Okay. So I started understanding this on a deeper level. And I guess I quickly wanted to say, when I started teaching in 2020, and could I take a little tangent to say how that happened? Okay.
Absolutely.
So now I'm learning how to give it all to spirit. I use it all interchangeably. Source, God, creative energy. To me, I don't care about the name. It's what I feel, what it is. And I was starting to surrender more because I'd been forced to. And now I'm like, okay, I didn't die. I'm able to do this. So right in February 2020, I had been now living with my parents for a few months, and this high achiever who had been working since she was 16 years old now hadn't been working for 6 months. And I was starting to get like, okay, Kat, let's try to pull this in. And so my go-to was bartending, of course. So I thought, you know what? I'll just bartend a little bit while I get on my feet. I applied to 50 bars in the Inland Empire. And I'm talking about, I have a resume with like Morton Steakhouse, ESPN Zone, like some of the hottest bars and restaurants in LA. I didn't get one single interview. Not a single person called me. And I was like, I'm too good for you, Inland Empire. Sorry. That's my old LA. I'm from LA, but now I don't want to go back to LA now that I'm out of it. But not a single call. You know that's God. Well, I do now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, freaking out. And I went to yoga one day, and I was just at the end of yoga sobbing. And one of my favorite teachers, who is also a mutual friend with Jess, her name is Jenny Ray, and she's a beautiful, wise, sage woman, incredible woman. And she took me aside after class, and she was talking to me, and I'm like, I just don't know what to do, and blah, and I need to make money. And she goes, Kat, I remember you told me you've been playing music since you were 4 years old. Why don't you teach it? And I was like, no, I can't. I can't teach children, because she was like, why don't you teach children music? I was like, that's so precious. People's children is everything is like, I don't feel, qualified. And she goes, have you ever thought that you consider it to be so precious is what will make you such a great teacher? And I was like, okay. She's like, there's a music school across the street, Rock Stars of Tomorrow. Why don't you just apply? And later that day, I was like, okay, I'll try. I went online, and they had a little submission form thing. Put in a submission form. 5 minutes later, I got a phone call from the owner. Had an interview the next day and got hired.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Okay, God took away literally everything, and it's like, you're going this way, and there's no other, that's where you're going. So the reason I brought that up is when I started teaching, I first started teaching children, and I am so glad that I taught children before I taught adults. And the reason is children taught me how to teach music, especially the younger ones, because that's when I started noticing these quote unquote abilities that I have. Because I could feel the fears. I could feel what's going on in the children. I can hear when they would say something about their voice, I could hear if it was actually them or if it was something they've heard from their parent or someone else. I could just immediately tell the two. So the youngest kids, you could tell they hadn't already been, for lack of a better word, tainted by society. They'd come in and they were ready to sing and make sound and all that stuff. And it wasn't until about, funny enough, 8 years old that I would start to notice more of these fears and this trepidation come in.
opinions and judgment.
Completely. And so especially with the younger ones, and then bringing this with the older ones too, we would just have fun. I would use animal sounds, and we would just use our voices, and I was doing things that other teachers weren't doing, and it was all intuitive. And I was watching the kids totally grow and eat it up. And so when I had my first adult students, at first I felt a little trepidation to bring that in. But again, that intuitive thing was like, nope, use it. So I started bringing those same animal sounds and all of those fun exercises. And I started watching my students, my adult students, open up like when they were children. Again. And so to go back to your question, which was, do you remember?
What is voice activation?
Ooh. That wasn't the question that you just asked. So I'm trying to go back to that. Voice activation. I am helping people remember the voice that they were born with. Before all of the messaging in their childhood and beyond, before what parents told them, before learned behaviors from other kids and from adults around them, I am stripping away, or rather giving my students a safe space for them to strip away essentially this mud, this caking of like, there's like a diamond underneath, right? That's the voice. It's this perfect, beautiful diamond. And we're just pulling away this caked mud over it and allowing the diamond to shine through.
Does that happen with screaming? Does it happen with humming? What does that actually look like? And I'm sure that it looks differently for every person. But can you kind of just walk us through that?
Yes.
I'm so intrigued.
So firstly, something I wanted to say back to that diamond, or about children or when we were born. So in all of my research, or first I was understanding it intuitively, and then I was like, wait, there's something behind this. And this is something I always say, if you were born with healthy functioning vocal cords, you were born to sing. There is no concept of singers and non-singers. There are either people who have healthy functioning vocal cords, which are most people on this planet, and then there are some people who cannot use those vocal cords. Some can still make sounds, some cannot. But if you were born with healthy functioning vocal cords, you were born with, I call it a flesh instrument, with this perfect instrument and the ability to sing. And the perfect example is that, I don't know if it's 100% around the world, that when we come out of the womb, but maybe it is. Maybe it's every single baby cries as soon as they come out of the womb. Maybe there's a small handful who don't. But for the most part, as soon as we come out of the womb, the first thing we do is we open our mouth wide, our belly gets big, and we scream. That is singing, because singing is simply speaking, wailing, moaning, crying on pitch. So one of the things that I have to work on with people is, and this is a cultural thing that I've noticed, and I don't know when or exactly why it happened, but I have a few theories. I believe if we're talking about, I don't like to talk about they, quote unquote, the powers that be that are trying to control us or whatever that control system mechanism is, I believe that the most powerful parts of being a human being, there are whatever is trying to control us, or however we are controlled, usually there's an attempt to control what is our most powerful aspects of being human beings. One of them, I believe, is the naked body. to make us ashamed of our body. And I believe it's our vessel. It's incredibly powerful. Another one, as I said before, is our voice. I believe it is a sacred vessel given to us on purpose to make sound and to heal ourselves and others. So I believe that something was done to control our voices in various ways. And particularly women embody this control mechanism more so. And what I often have to do with most of my students, with women, it's a whole thing that we go through. But this separation of speaking voice and singing voice is a lie that has been created. There is only one voice. We have one voice, and it's almost as if our voices have been fragmented. So I will watch my students, I will watch new students as they're speaking to me, we're speaking, and then I'll say, oh, can you sing something for me? And I watch them freeze up. And I've watched that happen enough that I realize, oh, this is running through our whole culture, through our society. And this doesn't run through all cultures. It doesn't run in most indigenous cultures. If you go to villages in Africa, most, if not all, of the people are singing. And depending on where we are at culturally, our ancestors, whether like super ancient ancestors or not as ancient ancestors, they all sang. They were singing around the fire. They were singing with each other. They were singing to their higher. They were healing each other and themselves through song. And more and more until today, now, especially in America, or in more, lack of a better word, more like westernized countries, more and more we've made it that either you're a singer or you're not. And the ones who've been chosen to be singers, I'll just use Ariana Grande as an example, even they don't control their own voices. Their voices, for the most part, not all, but a lot of them have been co-opted and used to make money for someone else. Mostly, usually a man.
Yes. Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
Just taking a moment after that one. So what happens after someone comes to see you?
I will use one of my longest students as an example. And then you asked me a question, what goes on in an activation? So I'll use one of her lessons to explain, and then I'll tell you what she's doing now.
Okay.
I'm sure she'll be fine. Her name is Julia, and she's incredible. This incredible, gorgeous woman. And she already had a really beautiful singing voice when she came to me. So I have people from all walks of life who already are singing, professional singers, to people who come to me and say, I can't sing, which is a lie, but that's what they thought, because they can sing, and then I prove to them that they can sing. But with her, she had very similar programming to what I had. And her voice was locked in this pretty girl voice. And I'll say, particularly for me, one of the programming I had to work against was this gilded cage of being a pretty white girl. And so I have to sound a certain way, and I can't be too terrifying and too intimidating. And so I kind of sang that same way, but it wasn't my real voice. And I even spoke in a way that wasn't too intimidating or terrifying, or, would make it so that I could find a husband someday, like all of that old programming from my lineage. And so with her, I really got my footing as a teacher with her. We've done everything. I've had her speaking. We'll start, especially with a new student, I'll warm them up. And for the first couple lessons, I'm just giving them a space that they know that they can be safe with me. That's my number one. That's my number one thing. That's what I care most. That's what I believe at the essence of who I am as a teacher. My most important job is to create a safe space so that my student or this person that I'm holding this space with feels safe to be able to go to uncomfortable spaces. Because we are working through a lot of old patterning and even a lot of lineage stuff. So it really does look different for every student because I'm tapping into what they're going through intuitively, and we start to create this dialogue. And so I will create exercises that work with them. And if something isn't working, then we go with something else that will be more powerful. And so with Julia, she's just been totally game for everything. And we've done things from, we'll literally sit in a meditation where I'll do a meditation where we connect the heart chakra with the throat chakra. I've helped her with that fragment of the speaking voice and the singing voice. I'll help her call them in to her voice as one. I did a whole meditation with her of calling to her voice and what would she name it? What would it be named? And having her start to create a dialogue with her voice, talking to it, giving it words of affirmation, of love. To sometimes they'll be screaming like animals. If there's maybe anger going on or tapping, something came up of like, oh my gosh, and that person when I was 9 years old told me that girls shouldn't sound like that, and tapping into that. I work a lot with women with, Jess talks about this, something called the witch wound. And not to go too deep into that, what that looks like in terms of our voice for a lot of women is this terror, this fear of sounding crazy, too loud, hysterical, like a banshee, like cackling. So I notice a lot of women have a fear of going into their higher range with power and instead going into this soft, sweet Disney sound up there. And it's all this fear of sounding like too much up there. So we'll scream like banshees, we'll howl at the moon, we'll speak in gibberish, which is one of my favorite vocal warm-ups, which I could do a little bit for you if you'd like to hear it. So interestingly enough, this is one of those exercises that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's totally based in a lot of scientific research that I've done in understanding languages and how we use our mouths to speak language. So the English language, sadly enough, is not the best language conducive for singers.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
We don't open our mouths very wide, especially standard American, especially as like a California girl. We don't open our mouths very wide. Now we have this Kardashian sound going on that's like even worse for the voice. It's like, literally, can I be as small as possible and just not even exist is what that feels like to me. As opposed to this forward, active, the alive sound where I'm driving the sound forward and using my body to drive that sound. The speaking voice that I have now, I had to learn this. I had to relearn this after speaking like a SoCal girl for a long time.
There's power in it.
Yeah.
From when you kind of sat, and your body even changed. I
Yes.
can't say this right now, but your
Yeah.
body kind of sat back and tucked in, and I felt like your spine kind of curved, and you moved forward when you were speaking in your quote-unquote Kardashian voice.
Yes.
And then when you were using your voice, your true voice, you sat up, there was like more power.
Shoulders go
depth.
back. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the other languages are much more conducive to singing. Italian, Spanish, I mean, most languages over English. And again, I don't know if that was done on purpose. I don't know if that's a frequency and energetic thing or what, but there's, it's a weird coincidence. But so like, forgive my terrible accent, but because I'm always loving to play and explore. So like in Italiano, they have so many vowels and it almost sounds like they can break into song at any moment. So it's a much more conducive language to singing. It's much more forward. They open their mouths more and they use their articulators. So like with English, we don't open our mouths as wide. So I will use this gibberish exercise and I will open my mouth wide and I will use, so what I'm doing is I'm working out my jaw muscles and my articulators in a way, my articulators are the muscles around the mouth and my tongue in a way that don't get worked out when I'm speaking English.
Interesting.
So I'll show you. Shabarak shikra papasti stara dora shora kasta la staba dida sto ana shara kapa shika pasti lara shora kapata tiroga.
I know we can't,
Yeah.
should be, maybe I'll crop that and
Okay.
put in a little
But
video.
you could see, right?
I can totally see all the different movements in your mouth, even in your neck.
Yes.
Even the muscles going all the way down to your neck as you just did that for us. Fascinating.
Yes. Very fascinating and very effective. I will honestly use gibberish when I'm singing through a difficult song and I feel myself getting fatigued. I'll just start singing it in gibberish instead.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Now, I do have one question.
Okay.
One last question before we head out. Well, probably not one last, but I feel like by using your voice and learning about your voice a little bit more, it unlocks something to where maybe you feel more confident. Maybe you feel more in your own power, not just with your voice, but as yourself, as your highest self. Maybe even more in your truth and being open to being expanded in that sort of way. Am I wrong?
You are completely correct.
Okay.
I have watched, it's a beautiful process of what I do to heal myself heals my voice. What I do to heal my voice heals myself. So it's this beautiful tennis game or right, that's all feeding each other and it's all helping each other. So the more that I work to empower myself in any way is always helping to empower all aspects of myself. So I am so grateful that I started doing this voice work in 2019 because when 2020 happened and there's a lot of different stuff going on and everybody has different opinions, and I felt brave enough to speak my truth and then to be able to navigate what I felt was my truth while holding potentially other perspectives and to be able to learn how to communicate with others. And if people did not like what I said and came at me, to be able to still hold myself with composure and try to have this dialogue with them. And I know, coming from somebody who used to be terrified of speaking, somebody who used to tell little white lies all the time, because that essentially came from believing that my truth wasn't good enough, so I had to lie instead, for me healing my throat chakra, I've made a very, very conscious effort to not even ever say little white lies, because I believe they're just little digs in our soul. Not the worst thing in the world, but they also, it's like eating a candy when I don't need to, kind of thing.
They have some weight to them.
Yes. So for somebody who really struggled with her truth and who used to feel very uncomfortable in tense situations of speaking up for myself. I was bullied as a child, so I had a hard time speaking up for myself. I used to be a person that if something tense would happen with somebody, I couldn't even speak. I would just start crying. And it would literally happen like in a work situation where it was inappropriate or felt inappropriate, but it would just be my response because I had no words. So then to find that fast forward to 2020, I'm able to learn how to eloquently speak my piece and dialogue with other people and then admit if I felt like I was wrong about something. All of that is a direct result of the voice work that I am constantly doing.
I love that. I love that. If somebody is experiencing this, I know I resonate with your story so much as far as like being silenced or just saying my voice wasn't good enough. I don't identify as a singer. That's never something that, actually Jess told me the other day, I think I was humming and she was like, you have a great voice. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
What? But for somebody who experiences like in the past, exactly what you just said, instead of being able to use your voice, tears would just come. I would feel like I would have a ball in my throat,
yes,
just a blockage and just not allowing things to come out. I've worked on it. This podcast has really helped me have a different relationship with my voice. But for somebody who hasn't quite figured that out for themselves, how can they start working and building a different type of relationship with their voice so they can start to feel a little bit more confident and more powerful and more secure in their truth?
Yes. Step by step. And what exactly I mean by that is, for my process, it had to be step by step. And what that looks like, essentially, to do anything that feels terrifying, I believe, then this is a whole other thing, but I have been able to learn how to regulate my nervous system. And that's huge. And I know you do breath work, right? So all of that is about regulating the nervous system. And I believe if we can regulate our nervous system, we can change our life.
1,000%.
Yes. Yes. So that's what I'm constantly doing with myself and with my students. So it's one little piece by piece. All we have to do is do challenging things. And to be able to do challenging things is how am I saying this? In order to do challenging things, we need to just show our body that it is not going to die.
Yeah.
And you can do that one little step at a time and working on it, going to your breathwork sessions. So breathwork, and humming and finding on YouTube a little throat chakra meditation, affirmations, speaking that out, using our voice, and then in little small things. So maybe if it's scary to speak your truth right now, maybe you don't have to go on your Facebook and put a bomb on your Facebook, which I did in 2020, essentially. So not everybody has to do that, but you can start small by telling your mom that you don't like, when she says that kind of mean thing to you, and then being like, oh my gosh, I didn't die. Okay, so that one little step, and then after that, you feel a little braver to be like, now I can tell my boyfriend that it's not okay that he did that. I didn't die again. Maybe I can sing a small song at karaoke night, and it's just step by step. And the more you can practice deep breathing while doing these scary things, find a way to regulate your nervous system whilst doing scary things to show your body we're okay. We're okay. We're safe. We're alive. That didn't kill us. We don't have a lion we have to run from in this moment. And that's it. Step by step.
Kat, what a pleasure it you on and to learn a little bit more about you and what you do and the work that you are bringing to this world. It's amazing. Where can we find you? I know you're on Instagram, but can you just kind of tell us where you're at, where you're hanging out these days?
Yes. Instagram is where I'm putting a lot of content. So it's Wylde Voices, WYLDE, because I like the old English look. So Wylde, VOICES, is that how you spell voices? Yes. That's where I put a lot of my content in small, palatable bites. That's where anybody can DM me. My website is launching next week, wyldevoices.com.
That's exciting.
I know, where people...
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's a huge step. That's been a fear. I've just been deep breathing while doing it.
And then one more question. Do people have to work with you in person, or can you do, I guess, Zoom or phone sessions?
Both.
Okay.
Zoom.
Cool.
Yes. Actually, I've had great success over Zoom, and you could just be in the comfort of your own home or bedroom and just feel in your safe space.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your voice. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you.